bankruptcy because the fact they couldn't pay out for the loans. Why would the banks extend it, loans that people can't even pay?
It was greed. And that was 2008.
2008?
That's what that is. That
Yeah.
is, what you're talking about is that event. It's
I
greed.
just didn't understand why. I mean, you said that, the character capacity of it. I just didn't understand the part, why would the, lender give them the money knowing that they can't, sustain to pay it out, and then they take it.
No,
Take their profits.
it's greed. And remember, and I'll go back here. Now, I'm teaching you guys this as consumers. But if you guys were lenders, I would teach you the same format.
Okay.
Capacity. It's not about what you have, but what you do with it. Remember that verse in Exodus 23? You take it little by little, because wealth that's gained hastily will surely vanish, and anyone that's rushing to get rich quick considers not that they're going to poverty. So as a loan officer, and during that time, I'm getting large commissions. Economically, we're having a 7 or 8 year run of growth. So everything's booming, it's good. So as a loan officer, I'm just handing out loans hand over fist because I'm getting all this commission. The economy's going up. So like if the economy is constantly going up at 12 or 13%, then you can afford to take on higher loans because you're earning more money in the market. But if the economy ever goes down, which it will, if you're over leveraged, then you're strapped. That's it.
Yeah.
And they weren't counting, like economies go down, but 2008 was an aberration because the economy went so far down that nothing held up. States and big institutions had to be bailed out. And it's a little bit of a shell game, so I don't want to get too technical because there's a lot of technical terms, but basically what banks do, like if I'm a big bank and I have a team that's investing the bank's assets, so not yours, but whatever the bank has, I want to invest that for the bank. What banks do is they will bundle up all these loans that they have and sell them as collateral for an interest rate. So the bank will take every single mortgage that they have. So think Chase, biggest bank, all the mortgages across the U.S. will bundle up all these different mortgages. And what we'll do is we'll have a couple good mortgages in the bundle, and we'll fill them with a whole bunch of crappy over leveraged mortgages, and we'll sell those. And what happened was they kept selling those and kept selling those and kept selling those, and then a market crash, which should have been like 10 or 15% drop, turned into 40. Like 2008 would have dropped, it just wouldn't have dropped as much. Because what happened is when the market dropped, because they were so over leveraged, then you start having additional foreclosures and people getting evicted because it dropped, and you had people making $30,000 living in $1 million homes. And when the market dropped, you couldn't afford that. And so a regular drop of 15-20%, which is common, turned into 40-50%.
Wow.
Because you over leveraged, because you did not take it little by little. See, both people were to blame. Banks were to blame, but so were the consumer. If you make 30,000, which I'm not throwing any shade on you, but you don't have no business in $1 million house.
That's right. Yeah.
You just don't.
That's above your means.
That's right. That is you hasting to be rich. That is, and that's exactly what God said. If I gave you everything at once, it would drive you out. And that's literally what happened. You took too much and you got kicked out your own house because you couldn't handle it.
Like, oh yeah, I got a nice house, but then they got taken.
Yeah, and I've witnessed it with somebody that I actually know, and it was like, ouch.
See? So I mean, what the common person doesn't know is that banks will. Have you ever noticed? Have you ever heard of people saying that my mortgage used to be here, now my mortgage is there? Because they sell mortgages.
And you don't have a say.
You don't. You don't.
You really don't.
And you don't know that you don't know what they're doing.
Who has my mortgage now?
What they're doing is they're either going to bundle all the mortgages up and sell them for a cost. So now, like if the mortgage portfolio is worth $1 million, someone says, I look at these interest rates, I think it's worth 3, so I'll give you $2 million for it. So now you just made $1 million as the seller, and they're estimating when you pay the loans off, I'll make $3 million, so I just made $1 million. I gave you 2, I made $1 million, and it cost 1, and you got 2 for it. You see what I'm saying? So they'll sell mortgages back and forth, or instead of selling it, they'll do like a bond type of instrument where I'll give you some money and I'll collateralize these loans and you give me interest based on that. So there's a lot of moving parts that you, as a consumer, you don't know that. How would you know if you didn't work there?
I mean, it was a little disturb you. You know, you
Yeah.
get a mortgage and you be like, who is this? You know,
Yeah.
they don't even tell you beforehand, before
Yeah.
time, so. it's
No, yeah, you just
wow.
get a letter in the mail, and next thing you know, you're like,
Well,
they
when
do
you
that
were
with
si-
student loans, they do
Yeah,
that
they
with
do that.
When we were signing all the papers, it was
collections.
probably in there.
Oh, it
It was in
is.
there somewhere.
Listen,
Yeah.
And their
but
miles
I
of
mean-
paper.
But like you said, a consumer, you don't know that.
I mean, unless you
And
really,
even if
really
you know it
studious
can
about
happen, you might not necessarily know when it happens or that it happened
Right.
until it already did.
It already happened.
And see, so what happens is during that time, the conditions were favorable for you to buy then, but because you were over leveraged and you were maxed out at capacity, you ended up being on the wrong, or not you personally, but one ended up being on the wrong side of that.
Okay.
So that is why, because 2001 through 2008 was a great year. So that's why during great years, it's not a time to buy. Like if I'm talking strictly strategy. If I was advising you on when do I buy, when do I sell, when do I borrow, if I was doing all that, I would tell you in years of growth, pay loans down. Don't buy anything.
Yeah.
And during years when the market was low, that's when you buy.
So that's what they mean when they talk about the difference of the seasons of it being a buyer's market or a seller's market.
Absolutely. Whatever they tell you it is, I want you, as a general rule of thumb, you do the opposite.
And
Opposite,
scripturally,
right, it is.
that's what it means. Like for us to be here is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. It says for us to be like the sons and daughters of what's his name now? I'm having a mental. The sons and daughters of, I keep thinking here, Ithaca. We're supposed to know the times and the seasons that are happening, right? And the Lord doesn't do anything except He tells somebody else first,
Yeah.
right?
That's 2020, right?
That's 2020, yeah.
2020. Chronicle. First Chronicle was 2020.
Yeah. But it'll come to me. The sons and daughters of Issachar,
It's a car, I think so.
Got you.
where you know the times and the seasons. I'm not a prophet, but I know financial decline is coming. I just know it.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just know it's going to happen. And so because of that, it's in the back of our minds about, like, don't do nothing fancy.
No, just say I wouldn't invest in stocks or anything. I would save in money market accounts
Okay.
at banks because they're FDIC insured.
Okay.
So that's up to $250,000 you're insured. So I will open up a high yield savings account online. They even have bonuses depending on how much money you have to give you $200 or whatever.
Oh,
Open
wow.
up high yield savings accounts that give you about 2.25%, 2.5%. Just park it and just put money there. And then once the decline is in full effect, now you're ready to buy. Because everyone else is trying to get out, you're trying to get in. So you want to be like the firefighters. Everyone is rushing out, you're rushing in.
So then, I mean, this is an exaggeration, but going on this previous thing that you said, which is different than being greedy, if somebody's selling their property for 45% less, you can get in a larger home without extending yourself because
Absolutely.
you paid less for it.
Right.
Because again,
Gotcha.
it's value.
Yeah.
It's value,
You know, they're selling it to you at a discount.
because that's what it's worth now.
Right. But you know that it's going to be worth much more. And they're moving on fear.
Yeah.
But
Gosh.
you're moving on preparation. Because remember, favor favors
Wow.
a pair.
Yeah.
So you knew this was going to happen. So now you're ready. You have enough money to buy it. You have enough money to help you maintain it while you're going through this. Because when you bounce back, which is scripturally our right, because the Word of God says that He will deliver us and satisfy us in the time of famine.
Yeah.
So we have a promise that during that time we will be kept. We know that once that time is over, now we've increased our value exponentially. That's how you do that.
That's powerful.
And so that, I mean, as an advisor, and I'm advising my clients I do have now, and I'm doing it personally, that don't be in a rush to buy anything now. And just save the money. If you have money, just save it. Just put in a little bank account, a little savings account, get a little 2%.
Yeah.
And when the time comes, you'll know. Like, now it's time.
Mm.
Everyone's fleeing. It's time.
Yeah.
So, but what you can't be is like in 2008. You can't be unready. You can't be
Yeah.
the one that I'm gonna buy now because everyone's buying, and then when everything drops, now not only have you lost what you have, but you're not ready to get more. You could have had more, but now you actually end up losing what little you did have, which is also scripture. And he that hears, to him more shall be given. But he that doesn't hear, the little bit that he has, he shall also lose that. Scripture. So, I mean, I say that to say that we have some back. Like, just don't take my word for it. You know,
Yeah.
just read it. What it says. So, did you switch out the camera and stuff?
No. Questions? Any more questions?
Yeah.
No? Okay, we'll take a break, 5-minute break, and then I'll switch out. Thank you. Good stuff.
You know, there's software called Linux. You don't have to use Microsoft Word, but because they're just so saturated, it's just common.
Yeah.
Credit reports are the same way. Because you have people say, I don't believe in credit. If you can live your life in the sense that you can buy cash for everything, you still may need credit. And here's why credit is important. Because credit extends beyond just, I need to borrow some money. When you go to apply for a job, they look at your credit. They call it financial fitness. If anyone ever says we do a financial fitness check, they're pulling your credit. Because they want to get it when they see your character. They want to see how your capacity, and they want to see just who you've shown yourself to be financially. Because how can you manage anything of somebody else if you can't manage your own finances? That's their thinking. And that's also scripture. God says again, if you're unfaithful with the unrighteous mammon, who will give you true riches? So that's what he's saying. If you can't handle this, how am I going to give you the good stuff? So employers do the same thing. So they pull your credit when you go to look for a job, when you go to turn on your electricity, when you go to turn on your water, when you go to get a car, when you go to get a cell phone, when you go to apply for rent. Not even, you're right, insurance, not even buying a house, just renting a place, they check your credit. You go to apply for a business loan, they check your credit. When you want to start a business, this is key. I want to make sure I put this out there. Even if you are starting your business and you are funding it with all cash, they still check your credit to see if they think this business will last.
Wow.
So your credit is an important reflection of who you are, even if you're not trying to borrow money. So for some people to say we don't need credit, to me is just an incomplete statement, because you don't need credit for purchasing. But it doesn't mean you don't need credit, period. Because people use it. You don't ever have to get into debt to have credit, by the way. You don't need to borrow money to have credit. You can get credit cards and never pay interest a day in your life and still have credit.
Amen.
So that's another fallacy. You don't need to get in debt to establish credit, but you do need to establish credit, because it really is how this society works. I'm talking about in America.
Because there's not a real factual paper way to tell about a person.
Right.
If you're a business, in a business sense.
Right. If I want to partner with you, people pull credit reports to see who you are. We can both decide to go half and half and buy a business, but I still need to pull your credit report to see what type of person you are. If thing shows up not found, then I'm like, how do I know this money that you're giving to me is legal? Because if I go into business with you and I can't trace your money and it's illegal, then I am liable. You see what I'm saying? Like, people don't think about that type of stuff.
Because I had no credit for a long time, and that's the worst thing, because they don't know your character. They don't know how you're going to pay for it when you do. And also, when you go to get a credit card, they looking like, okay, is she going to pay this? So, it's like having bad credit. You don't have credit.
And with that, credit also opens up doors to opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily get. Like, for an example, because of my credit, I've gotten calls from dealerships about, low pricings on vehicles and other opportunities that haven't come out to the public yet. Like, I'll get a phone call, it's invitation only. So people will use your credit, your history, and your relationship, because again, it's all relational. Credit is a part, but relationship is another part. So people will call you and give you ideas. In the financial industry, we call it IPOs, initial public offerings. So they do that with people with a lot of money. People who want to invest in stock before it becomes common to the public. That type of a deal. But credit plays a part in that. And so credit affects more areas than just I need to borrow money. Because I actually use credit for almost everything but borrowing money at this point. Like credit to me serves me in every way except borrowing because I don't do it if I can avoid it.
Wow.
So, but you still need it.
Yeah.
That's the first reason you want to do it. And I'll give you a strategy on this. Pull one credit report every 4 months because you get one free a month. So pull one January, pull one June or July, pull one again in September, and then rinse and repeat with January. So that way, every 4 months, you're pulling a free credit report. And the reason why you want to not pull all three is at the same time is because if something happens, you have to wait another year so you can pull it. Like if you pull all three and it's all good, but then something terrible happens. I mean, if you have Credit Karma and stuff like that, you can see it, but you have to file a dispute. It's just a lot of extra work as opposed to number two, in January, and there's some incredible difference between identity theft and just misreporting. Those two different things. So an accurate would be like I owned a car, like a Sears card, and the card says I made a late payment, but I never did. So it's still my stuff. They just reported it wrong. That's inaccurate. Wrong information is saying like I have a judgment for a property that's not my property. That's wrong. That's wrong. So identity theft is when someone steals your identity and uses it to open up lines that aren't you. Misreporting is when the people at the credit bureau put something on your report that they should have put on somebody else's because they are human. They make mistakes. So you might find something on there where your identity wasn't stolen, just someone put it on there by mistake. Case in point, I had my dad's stuff in my credit report before I was 18. Now my dad did not steal my identity. It was a misreporting because they reported it wrong.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to check because most people in this room have bad information on the credit report, just statistically. Make sure you pull all three, but just not all at the same time. And the scriptural reference is Proverbs chapter 27, verse 23. Be diligent to know the state of thy flocks, to look well to thy herds. So you need to know what's going on. What are people saying about you? That's important. That's process number one. Kind of getting into a little bit of the weeds now. Once you pull your credit report, there's two sections. I mean, there's more than two sections, but these are the two you want to focus at. This is the meat. At the first would be what's called adverse accounts, and the second will be satisfactory accounts. And it's just like it sounds. Adverse accounts are either accounts that are in collections or accounts that have late payments. And late payments are payments later than 30 days. Generally, your score does not get affected until your payment is beyond 30 days late. So if your payment's 15 days late, it's not good. You usually have to pay a late fee, but it doesn't affect your credit score. When your payment is beyond 30 days, that's when it affects your credit score. That's when it hits your character. And late payments, just like good character is the highest earning score, bad character also drops your score the quickest. Late payments will devastate your score quicker than anything else. Okay? And so when you're looking at it, if you want some strategy on how do I attack it, so let's say I have bad credit or I have adverse accounts, and what is the best strategy to handle this now that I see? The best strategy is putting your active accounts first. Active, adverse accounts, because there'll be active and inactive. Active means that they have not gone to collection yet, so they're showing up as bad, but you still have a potential to negotiate that relationship. Inactive means that they're in collections and the company gave up and they just sold it to somebody else. Now you're their problem. So if you have collection bad accounts and you have active bad accounts, deal with the active bad accounts first. Those will impact your score greater. Some scriptural references, Ecclesiastes 5:5. You do not make a promise and then fail to keep it. God's not a big fan of that. James chapter 5 verse 4 says, when people work for you and you fail to pay them, the money they deserve cries out to the Lord. And this is one of the reasons why I use this scripture is because of this. When people work for you, we consider it as if you employ somebody to work for you. We don't consider that the electricity that we have, the place that we live, the car that we drive, people worked to give us those things. So paying your bills on time is the equivalent of people working for you but you failing to pay them. If someone provides you a service and you do not pay for it, the money that you don't pay cries out to the Lord. He hears it, and that puts you in a bad spot. Both naturally if you don't pay your bills and spiritually. It's not a good look.
Wow.
And so, I mean, you know, water. Someone's working. Water just don't run by itself. People are working to provide you water. And best believe when your electricity and your heat come out, someone's out there fixing it, right? They're working.
Yes,
So
yes.
when your bills represent people who work for you, and when you fail to pay them, that reaches to the Lord. He don't like that. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 3 through 5 is negotiate with your creditors to free yourself from debt and do not procrastinate. That verse says, don't give any sleep to your eyelids, get it done. Now we know you have to sleep.
Yeah.
So it's not literally stay up a week in advance, but what it's saying is how you prioritize. If you owe people stuff and you're in debt, you need to prioritize making sure you square that away. That doesn't mean that you have to get it all paid off first, but that means start the ball.
Yeah.
Talk. Companies want their money.
Yeah.
But if you say, I can't give you the full amount, but I can give you $5 or $10 a week or a month from now, that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
That's good.
So
Talk.
the
That's
point
good.
is talk.
And they also like change due dates and stuff like that.
A lot of
They'll do
stuff.
that too.
Mortgages, they'll refinance. You know, they'll do a whole, like people will do stuff because they want the money.
Right.
Like, don't get it
Know what's
twisted.
going on.
People want their money. Don't disappear on folks.
Yeah. Right.
You tell them, this is my situation. This is what I can afford to do. Can we work something out?
Yeah.
If you do that, and let me tell you another thing, again, from a loan officer's perspective, personal story. Gave a guy a car, good guy, lost his job. It happens.
Yes.
You know what he did? Came to me and said, David, I lost my job. My payments are going to be a little bit late. So what we were able to do is we were able to combine payments and push his due date out like 2 or 3 extra months. We were able to give him 2 or 3 months, and it didn't affect his credit score. Give him time to find his job. See, now people, because remember, agencies reporting is not government issued. It's a business. So if a business says to you, I will not report your late payments, then it won't show up on your credit report.
Gotcha.
It's not a law that they have to report. They don't have to report anything. It's a choice. So if you work with them and you can work with them and get creative, it's like, hey, listen, let's say you have a negative, because negative payments affect your credit score badly. So let's say you have one negative payment on there, and you're like, hey, listen, I want to get this negative payment off my report. So how about I pay you all this right now, and in turn you remove that. So all you show is clean history. They say okay, and they remove that late payment, bumped up your score.
Yeah.
So when you call people to fix your credit, everything that I just said, that's what they're doing.
That's what
They're just doing all this stuff.
Yes.
And to me, it's a value add because people don't have the time to go through all this. But what I want to do is give you the knowledge of what's actually happening.
Right.
So if it's a one-off situation, instead of paying $100 a month, you can just go there and build a relationship. And I say that to say that the same guy for the car thing, I brought it up because he stuck out in my mind. Because I didn't see what happens is when you're late on a payment, there's a report that comes out. And every month when the loan officers are meeting, they're saying so-and-so is late, so-and-so is late. You're like, oh, now you see they're late. So then you have your collections team reach out to that person and be like, hey, you're late, you know, so on and so forth.
Right.
But instead of all that, because he wasn't even 30 days late, he was like 10. He came to me. He came into me and told me the situation. Negotiate. He didn't procrastinate. He didn't have to wait until it was an issue to deal with it. So, you know, this whole and that's just these are just some really good tips. Just basic understanding that if something is going wrong, talk with the person because they want the money.
Right.
No one's going to be like, hey, let's try to work this out. No thanks. They're not going to say that because they want the money.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to people. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. Happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Happened to me. Happened to everyone that I know. There's not one person I don't know that hasn't been through this. Not one. It happens. You know, I had a rough year financially. Didn't make a lot of money. Had a whole bunch of debt. Had to call people and be like, hey, listen, I just don't have it. I mean, I've done it. It happens. I'm not ashamed about it. It happens. The people that you're borrowing money from, it happens to them.
Right.
Or
I had a
we're
person
bankrupt.
admitted to me when I was calling for my own circumstances. I understand. I've been there.
I mean, GM went bankrupt. Ford went bankrupt. It happens. It doesn't happen to you. People internalize it as a high level of shame. You should be ashamed if you had the money and didn't pay. If you don't have it, nothing to be ashamed about because you're not robbing anyone. You just don't have it.
David, how do you feel about transfers? Like, say for instance, you want like if you have little small amounts of credit cards, and you want to transfer that balance to one card, is that a good?
If the
thing to
card
do?
has enough capacity. If you
Okay,
transfer to one card and you're maxed out, then you're not,
that's not good.
you're right, you know what I'm saying? You're just,
You're not helping your
no,
situation.
it's like, you know, my arm hurts when someone hits my leg, well, they both still hurt.
Right,
Different.
right. That's
Yeah, it doesn't really help, you know, but
Mhm.
if you have the capacity, but also usually transfers also charge you a 3% fee, either a minimum or a fee. So depending on the size of the transfer, you know, if you transfer in $300,
Uh-huh.
3% is $3 or $9. You
Okay.
transfer in 3,000, then it's 90. You transfer in 10,000, then it could be 300. So you know, it depends on how much it's actually costing you. But yes, transfers can be used, but usually people who have the ability to use transfers usually don't find themselves in that situation because that's how you get the ability to
Okay.
by not doing it. It's a catch-22. Like the more you don't get in an accident, the lower your insurance is. But the second you need it, they raise the rates.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, when you transfer those credit cards to one credit card, now what happens with the history? Does it stay there?
It does.
Of course.
Yes, history stays. History stays on your report for usually about 7 years after it's inactive. So, like, let's say so the car loan that I had in 2012 just fell off this year in my credit because it's inactive. But the credit cards that I have that are active are just going to keep rolling on. If you close a credit card, then you have probably about 7 years for that previous history, then it'll fall off. But as long as it's active, it'll be on.
So it's best to, if there's any credit cards you have like high APRs, whatever on, that you want to close, you know, it's best to close it as quickly as you possibly can.
You can have. I don't mean to just. He's a professional. You have to be very careful about closing credit cards.
Very
I
careful.
remember that.
Very careful.
So just leave a couple of dollars.
It
or
it,
whatever.
it, it depends because with even though it's not a C, one of the things that character measures is length of time, which is a factor in your credit score. And if you have a credit card that you've had for 10 years but has a small limit, and then you have a large limit credit card you only have for 6 months, let's say you close a small credit card, now you're losing 10 years of history.
Yeah.
Even though it stays on your report, it's not actively 10 years of history.
Yeah, and I just recently learned that because I've been, not the way you showed us, but I've been looking at my credit report because that's what I'm in the process of working on. I got a ways to go, but it shows you history and the score, like how many, like the percentage, and how if you get to this point, then your score will go up a certain amount of points. So I just recently witnessed that for myself, that the history.
It matters. History, because again, history is what teaches me about you. Like if again,